Okay, so in this slot, we're actually going to cover a little bit more on the content. So what does the journey look like from when you start at the Digital Geekaship? What is the courses? What's in those courses? And also, yeah, that's basically that. So then you can ask questions if you want to know anything about the content. Okay, so there's this. So what makes a hotshot developer? So there's a few things that's involved in that. Okay, so you will see skills as just one of them. A lot of technical people think that if they can code really well, or if they're very proficient in a particular framework, then they're actually a hotshot developer. And I can tell you, managing developers for 18 years, that is not the case. Okay, so there's actually so much more to it. So firstly, you've got to develop yourself on a personal level. So Gladstone did allude to that earlier, that some of the stuff we focus on is how do you present yourself, actually building your self-confidence as a person. You also have to learn how to work with others. How do you engage others? How do you consider others? And then most importantly is the experience. So since that we start with practical from basically the second week that you're on the program, you get to practice. So you build up your experience basically from right in the beginning. That is also the commitment that we ask, that you be available 10 to 3, because that's how we accelerate you. You've got to engage with it and engage with a team of professionals and mentors that can help you along the way. So if you really want to become a hotshot developer, it's a big commitment. And you've got to practice. You've got to be passionate. You've got to be involved. You've got to be immersed in the content for 2.5 months. You can't just do it an hour a day. Then it's still going to take you 3 years. And that's why we fundamentally think why our program works different to others, because we actually get to practice it more regularly than what's currently being done. Okay, so we basically have 3 tracks that we focus on in the basic course, as well as the full stack development, which we're starting in mid-February. So the first part is actually a personal development track. I'm going to go into what that means. So you will have content and exercises and practices you'll have to go through that focuses on building you as an individual. Then we have an agile software development track, which is an iterative way of managing your work. You'll also use that methodology to manage your own work in a weekly cycle. So you're going to present and engage with us as you will engage with your customers every day. So your mentor will almost be your customer. So you will present to them your work in that fashion, so you can get comfortable when you have to move to a corporate environment, understanding how do you actually engage and deliver. Because that's one of the fundamental things we found is missing, is that you can code, but you don't know how to get that code out and how to make it work, and how do you manage your time? How do you estimate? How do you know how long it's going to take you to do certain activities? So we teach you all of those things in the agile development track. Then we also have a software development track, of course, which we've spoken about. So you'll kick off with a base language, choosing C#, Java or JavaScript as the backend language of choice, or you can embark on the full stack software web development course. There we built fundamentally on JavaScript, both the backend and the front end. So that's basically the choice that you can make. So I'll go into the courses a bit more just now. Okay, so what do we do on personal development course? So this is uncomfortable for some people initially, okay, because we do ask you to inspect yourself as an individual, so to discover who you are. And this gets deep. I always say it's a little bit of the fluffy stuff, and especially the guys tends to be more uncomfortable than the girls, but we help you to discover that, because that's how you build self-confidence. If you can actually tap into your core strengths and understand who you are as a person, then you build your self-confidence. solutions. Part of our techniques is also doing a lot of presentations. So we'll teach you how to put together presentations like today. How do you get to stand in front of people and present? The reason being, as software engineers, we often have to present our work to clients, and they tend to, if you don't seem very comfortable, they tend to climb into you, trust me. So you want to avoid that at all costs. And it also gives them, it makes them uneasy. If you can't stand there and in confidence present your work to them, it's sort of, they start worrying. Okay, so as a software developer, you just want to make sure that you eliminate all of that worry from the customer. Otherwise, they make your life difficult. Okay, so we also focus on teamwork and dynamics, and we focus on abstract thinking. So, because as a software developer, you often have to build pictures in your mind. So, so you have to see the big picture. You need to think like that. So you can't just focus on a small thing, because the work that we do is interconnected with lots of other things. So you need to keep that picture almost in your mind. You also need to know how to problem solve. So trust me, you hit 10 problems every day. Okay, so you will take a document of a framework as an example. So there will be a how-to installation guide for MongoDB, and you will run through MongoDB and install it step by step as they tell you, and then it doesn't work. It doesn't start up. You can't get the database to start. Okay, so now where do you start? And this is the life of a hotshot developer. You get faced with problems all the time, and you need that capability to actually know what does the error look like? Okay, where do I find the error? And then how do I get that error somewhere else to search for the information? So Google is your friend, trust me. Gladstone did allude to being that you will learn research skills, and that's what it means. You need to be able to navigate this vast amount of information on the internet to actually solve your problems. It's also complicated because sometimes we have other things installed on our machine that causes the installation to not work. And that's that troubleshooting technique that you will have to learn. Okay, trust me, it's your biggest strength, and the more experience you have in this, the quicker you can solve the problems and the quicker you can move forward. So you'll definitely get support from our mentors in terms of learning that skill and how do you go about resolving issues you might experience. We also do creative thinking. That's sort of not to do with software development at all. So out of the box crazy things and the exercises that we give you to do. So to stimulate the way that you think about stuff. So out of the box, how do you solve a problem that's not technical? So that actually stimulates your ability to be a hotshot developer. We'll also help you prepare for your first interviews and your CVs, and make sure that when you get to a potential client or employer, that you can actually present yourself in a good way so you could get the job. So our guys would help you with that as well. So that's our personal development track. On the agile stuff, when we work as hotshot developers, we work with requirements. So you're going to sit with a client, they want something to be built, and that requirement is described in a particular way. So you're going to get exposure to those requirements, because as a developer you need to understand and read the requirements from the client before you can start with your bit of the work. So that's what people often don't understand. They think it's just about coding. It's actually more about understanding what the client wants and how do you interpret those requirements to come up with the solution. So that's very important. So this so we also teach you how do you plan your work. How do you engage with the business or with clients to actually plan your work? And then how do you execute that work? So Agile works in an iteration. So we work in a weekly cycle. So say we start on a Tuesday. On a Tuesday morning, you will plan your work with your mentor. We'll use Jira as a tool, Jira software. It's the best agile project management tool in the world currently. We're also a local partner for Atlassian in South Africa, so we know the tool set very well. And so you will plan your work, You will learn how to execute your work through the week, and how do you keep track of your work, and at the end of the week, how do you close out your work. So you'll review with your mentors, and then you'll go through all of those details. Okay, so at the end of this, you'll basically, there's another software or another career path in IT that's called a Scrum Master. So you will be equipped with the skills of a Scrum Master as well as a developer at the end of this. So if later on in your career you want to become more of an agile project manager than just the developer, that's something you'll have the basics to start. Agile delivery methodologies is also very critical in corporate. South Africa is lagging a little bit behind. So the rest of the world, you don't work on any IT projects if it's not in Agile. They all have adopted it here. Even the big corporates are all slowly busy with Agile transformations. So you'll actually have that skill. So this is really critical for you to start your career. You will be more lucrative and attractive to employers if you've actually worked with Jira as well as understanding how to deliver in an Agile fashion. And then you'll have exposure to Agile project management techniques through the program. Okay, so this is just, in short, our basically career path, or just focusing on the development part. So for 2018, we're only going to focus on the technical development tracks. From next year, we will also be exposing people to Agile project management, testing and analysis. So we'll start branching out in other key roles from a learning perspective for people from next year. But this year we focus on that. So we are actually launching over here with our basic software development basics. So as explained, this is for people that's never studied any form of coding before. Okay, so we don't expect you to have experience as a software developer or having to have worked with a language at all. So those are for the guys that's really green. So if you're out of matric or you haven't considered or haven't studied at all, that's basically the starting point. There you will choose the language. We can help you through conversation to understand what language you might want to explore. Although I would encourage you, so as I said myself, I can code in 5 different languages. I would not encourage you to choose a career where you only focus on one language. We believe that the best software developers can actually easily swap between different environments, and you'll get exposure to that. The other course that we are launching is what we call this a full stack web developer. So with the introduction to that, you will do for 3 months, and then you will go after that, you can go on to the intermediate course if you wanted to do that. So the full stack developer course, we do expect you to have coded before. Okay, so what we find is that in most tertiary education places, what happens is they actually have never deployed an application. All that we require you to have had exposure to syntax and basic coding structures, because we don't cover it in that course. Although we will do an assessment to see where your gaps are, and we might require you to pick up some of the content and the modules from the basic software development track in order just to fill your gaps. But that's all included in that 3 months. So you might have a little bit of extra work, but it's part of the cost and the duration of that period. Okay, so then after software development basics, you can then go to the intermediate track. That's when you start working onto the front end as well as exposing REST services. So I don't know, does anyone know what a REST service is? Okay, so let's think, have you heard of API? Okay, so that's basically an API. So what happens if you look at Facebook as a platform, you can actually build little applications on the Facebook platform. So Facebook will then give you a REST API or a REST web service. So we'll teach you how to expose those things. So that then opens your application for integration into other applications and front ends and mobile devices, etc. So that becomes a little bit more technical. So once you've got that in place, you'll embark on that piece of information. application, and then we go through database and front ends for the full stack development. At the end of that, you could decide to slap on UX and UI. So there we focus a little bit on how do you make things look pretty. So you see all the nice interfaces that we like. There's a user experience that goes into it, navigation. We're not focusing on graphics, that's not what we're doing, but on how do you lay out a good web application, etc. So we focus a little bit more on that. There is interactions with your customers. So how do you engage with a customer to understand their persona, what we call customer personas, and how do you design an interface to actually service your clients the best. Then there is a module for mobile development as well. As the first stance, we work with a framework called Ionic. That's a cross-platform mobile framework that switches between Android, iOS, so you can deploy to multiple devices. You still package it as a an application on your Play Store, etc., and deploy it in a similar fashion. Some applications are not good to use that framework for. So if you wanted to choose to do native Android and iOS development, you could do that as well. So the choice in the mobile development is up to you, which of the three frameworks you would like to use. Okay, so basically the full software engineer, which is full stack, all the complicated things of integrations, working with document databases, it's literally giving you the full stack, takes 11 months. Okay, so that is our full program, but you can chop it off in bits and pieces. As I say, that's the modules are sort of 2.5 months to 3 months, and after you've completed 3 of them, then you've basically completed the end-to-end qualification. Okay, any questions?